I'm going to call the joint meeting of the Hollis Brookline Cooperative School Board and the Hollis Brookline Cooperative School District Budget Committee to order at 6:30 p.m. I am Holly Darlow-Babcock, Chair of the Hollis Brookline Cooperative School Board. Joining us tonight from the school board is Tom Solon, the Vice Chair, Kate Stoll, Krista Whalen, I'm going around looking at you and registering faces, Beth Williams and Cindy Van Conant. Tom Enright has an excused absence. From the administration, we have Andy Corey, our superintendent, is joining us at the table. And then we have some SAU administrators, Lauren DeGennaro and Gina Bergsog, our assistant superintendent, and Lauren's our director of student services. We also have Linda Sherwood, our assistant business administrator. Kelly Seeley is joining us as well as our business administrator. And Tim Grisone, principal of the high school, is here. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Darlene.
Good evening. I would like to call the meeting on of the Hollis Brookline Cooperative Budget Committee to order this evening at 6:31 p.m. Introduce myself, Darlene Mann, and the members of the committee present this evening, which include Dave Blinn, Tom Whalen, Tony Stanizzi, Matt McGuire, Raul Blanchet, Brian Rader, and Cindy Van Conant, who is our school board representative to the budget committee.
Great. Are we going to appoint process observers?
If you want to.
Anybody from the school board want to be a process observer tonight? No? Someone? Beth, thank you. Okay, great.
Tom Whalen will be ours.
Terrific. Okay. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Darlene.
Andy, did you want to make any comments?
Yeah, I got a couple things if I could. First of all, for all those watching, it is our intent to open school tomorrow at regular time. We have spent a lot of time this afternoon going over everything. We feel quite confident based on the forecast and our calls with the state, and have spoken to all our surrounding districts, and everybody plans to open. I know there are a lot of disappointed children at home right now, but I did want to get that out, so thank you for that. Also, I just want you to make citizens aware, we had received 5 petition warrant articles, which we'll be discussing later tonight. But 2 of those articles require public hearings. So, and these will be posted again, but I wanted to take the opportunity tonight. For the tax cap public petition article will be February 16th in Brookline. And the article of agreement petition warrant article that we'll discuss later tonight will be February 16th in Brookline. For a citizen's petition, we're required to do a hearing in both towns. So the tax cap will be done here at the middle school on February 20th, and the articles of agreement will be done here at the middle school on, again, February 20th. And then we'll be discussing. Pardon me?
CSDA.
CSDA. Thank you, Tom. And then we'll be discussing a potential other hearing when we go through the articles later. Thank you. I'll turn it back over to the chair.
Okay, great. At this time, I'd like to just take a few minutes and give a few introductory remarks about that pertain to the articles that we're going to be discussing tonight. It should only take about 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll recess and move into the public hearing for the budget and the articles of the warrant. So, yeah, if you're going to organize the presentation a little bit. Okay, you can go to the next slide. Okay, great. So overall, for the warrant that will be presented in March, we have 6 articles that have financial impacts for the district. The first one will be an article addressing energy efficiency upgrades for a total of $291,272. That'll have some long-term financing associated with it. The second article is the HESA contract for $162,006. The operating budget for $26,499,039. The SAU budget for $1,140,822. A facilities trust for $300,000. A special education trust for $25,000. for a total warrant value of $28,543,139, which represents a just over 6% increase from the current budget for FY23. Next slide. Just a brief overview of kind of how that budget distributes among various categories. It's a little over 50% on salaries and benefits for regular education staff, another 19% for student services, and that includes staff as well as programs, another 13% for general education support and academic expense, and the remaining elements of the budget are distributed pretty consistently and evenly among debt service, transfers, transportation, regular education transportation, and building maintenance. Our student enrollment right now for the two schools in the district, the high school and the middle school, looking into FY24 is going to be just over the 1,100 student mark. It's a projected decrease of about 35 students in FY24. And what we do see happening for the through FY28 and beyond is start to see some increases start to tick up as some of the population at the lower schools start to move up and matriculate into the co-op. If you go next slide, that composition is split between the two communities of Hollis and Brookline, and has significant bearing on how costs are apportioned between the two districts. And we stand at about a 55-45 split, 55% Hollis, 45% split for Hollis and Brookline, between Hollis and Brookline. So overall, the budget that I indicated is not the budget that directly impacts your the community's tax rates. That's something called tax effort, which is an amount less than the budget. So the red and kind of highlighted, outlined columns represent what's actually collected in tax effort, while the blue higher lines are what's approved at the meeting. What was interesting to note about the last couple of years is that the tax effort has been lower than we've estimated due to some significant budget underruns and a return of very significant unreserved fund balances for the last several years. They've been over $1 million for the co-op. That impact on tax rates results in actual rates on the local portion of the bills in Hollis and Brookline that are actually below what we estimate here at the public hearing and at the annual district meeting. But for the tax bills that were just sent out in November, based on the estimates for the budget that were in this year, the estimate, it was a total change in, the tax rate was a total change of 63 cents per thousand in Hollis, which was below the estimate, and a change of 67 cents per thousand for the co-op, which is again lower than the estimate for Brookline. As we move into the estimates and projected items for FY24, one of the biggest and most significant impacts is going to be a reduction in anticipated revenue. As I just mentioned, we had a significant unreserved fund balance, which meant we had a higher revenue number for the current year, which was $3.2 million, and that revenue estimate is dropping down to $1.85 million, which is a reduction of almost $1.5 million. You can go back one. Where state aid is concerned, while our numbers are about $110,000 below in total, and let's see, $33,000 less for anticipated for Hollis and about $83,000 less anticipated for Brookline, you will notice there are some significant shifts between the adequacy grant, which is typically based on student population, and the SWEPT, or the retained grant, which is based on money raised by the statewide education property tax. There are some significant shifts from FY23 to FY24. For Hollis to the tune of about $364,000, and for Brookline about $153,000, because of the expiration of legislation that specifically reduced the statewide education property tax and the associated rate. Because that legislation is expiring, the amount of funds raised through the statewide education property tax rate go up, the rate goes up, and affects the overall amount in the bill. Again, that was one-time legislation. If the legislation is put forward and the current legislative body wants to, and Concord wants to continue, continuing that, they can certainly do so. I'm not aware of legislation that addresses it for this year. But what the previous legislation did was actually remove $100 million that was previously raised through the swept tax and took it from another source of the state budget. So it literally lifted $100 million from what needed to be assessed among the communities. That $100 million and it was specifically removed to alleviate to lower property tax rates and give taxpayers a little bit, more room and see some savings in their taxes. As I said, that's expired. That $100 million is now put back on the entire population across the state of New Hampshire, and is part of what's raised through a tax and then returned directly to the district. So the $1.3 million you see there raised in Hollis, we receive in Hollis, and the $600,000 that's received from Brookline is a direct result of $1.3 million being raised in taxes and $600,000 raised in taxes. It's a dollar-for-dollar return to each community that pays into the tax rate. So in total, the three main things that are affecting the change in tax effort as we move into and look at and estimate the FY24 budget impacts are, as I said, as we'll discuss, a budget increase of about $1.6 million, a revenue decrease of almost $1.4 million, and a state aid reduction of another little over $100,000. So that results in a net change in tax effort of over $3 million. So it isn't driven just by the budget that we're reviewing, it's also driven by other elements like revenue and state aid. So in total, what we're looking at, as I mentioned, is that total budget of $28.5 million. We would reduce co-op revenue in total, and what results is an amount that gets apportioned between the two districts. So we'll be down to $26,689,277 to be apportioned between the districts. Each district, and I'll show this in a later slide, has its own swept and adequacy grants reduced, but in total, it's a little over $5 million for both towns combined. And the net total tax effort between Hollis and Brookline would be $21,609,721. As I mentioned, we do have the costs are apportioned and shared between the two, if you can go to the next slide, between the two communities based on an estimate of average daily membership at the end of the current school year, which we're estimating and holding the FY22 end of year number at, which was a 53-47% split. There's an equalized value component to our apportionment formula as well, and the estimates show we'll be at a 69%, 31% split between Hollis and Brookline on our property values. It leads to a net apportionment of about 54 to 46. And after applying each community's adequacy aid and swept grant, the total net tax effort results in a split of the apportioned amount, the amount after revenue is accounted for, of 55.5% cost to Brookline and 44.5% cost to, 55.5% cost to Hollis and 44.5% cost to Brookline. So this is a restatement of some of the summary data I mentioned before that apportionment slide, and this shows the distribution between the two communities. So the $26.7 million that's calculated after revenue gets apportioned using our apportionment formula with the ADM and EV components that I just mentioned, to $14.5 million for Hollis, reduced by its state aid of $2.5 million, yields a tax effort of just shy of $12 million for Hollis, which, based on our estimates, would yield a tax rate of $8.11 per thousand. In Brookline, the associated or estimated amount prior to state aid is just shy of $12.2 million, Once it's reduced for aid, they would be raising through the tax rate $9.6 million, and that would be a tax rate of $13.56 per thousand. So at this point, I will recess the Budget Committee as we move toward the public hearing at 6:45 PM. Do we need a vote to do that?
It looks like we do in the
Okay.
outline.
So I'll take a motion to recess the
Make a
Budget
motion
Committee
to recess the budget committee.
from Raul, seconded by Matt. All those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
Great, and I'll take a motion from my board to recess until the conclusion of the public hearing.
So moved.
By Beth.
Second.
Second by Kate. All in favor? 6-0. And it's 6:46 PM.
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, so at this point, I'd like to open the public hearing for this evening for consideration of the FY '24 district warrant for the Hollis Brookline Cooperative School District. We do have some meeting rules for the public hearing and just some basic background information. So for the public hearing, we'll be introducing the articles with financial impact. We could anticipate public input provided per article. After the public hearing of all the articles, the Budget Committee and the School Board will deliberate and take positions on them. The Budget Committee can amend the operating budget article, and there's a 10% maximum allowable appropriation limit on the amount that can be recommended at the district meeting. For public input, input is restricted to Hollis and Brookline residents of voting age. Exceptions are made for administration. Input will be requested per article. We would ask for name and address for our records, for questions to be directed to the chair, limit on speaking time to 2 minutes, and a person may speak again to an article after others have had an opportunity. We ask that the points be brief. So while part of the agenda this evening was to have a hearing with regard to Article 1, and then we would be moving into a hearing with regard to the operating budget and the other elements of the article. And at this time, what we're going to do is hold on the public hearing for Article 1. That's going to be held at a different date on February 20th. Because of a change to the article and the financing of it. We're not going to be reviewing or discussing it this evening. The article language, we are anticipating it changing to reflect bond language. That is, this is information we've received from council just before the hearing this evening, and we'll be moving forward with the public hearing on that on the 20th. Andy, would you like to add anything at this time?
I would intend to go over that when we come out of recess.
Okay.
And update both the Budget Committee and the School Board about the article that I provided you, and what the reasoning and rationale is around that, and what the mechanisms are to address that.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to go to the next one. Go to the next one. We're going to be up. So at this point, we'll move on to the other items in the warrant, which include Article 2, which is for the support staff contract, to see if the school district will vote to approve the cost items for the third year of a 4-year collective bargaining agreement reached between the Hollis Brookline Cooperative School Board and the Hollis Education Support Staff Association for the 2021-22, 2022-23, 2023-24, 2024-25 school years, which calls for the following increases in support staff salaries and benefits at the current staffing levels for fiscal year 2023-24, estimated increase of $162,006, and further to raise and appropriate a sum of $162,006 for the third fiscal year, 2023-24 school year, such sum representing the additional costs attributable to the increase in support staff salaries and benefits required by the new agreement over those that would be paid at current staffing levels. At the conclusion of the full public hearing, both the Board and Budget Committee will take positions on this contract. At this point, the estimated tax increase is 5 cents per thousand in Hollis and 8 cents per thousand in Brookline. Does So at this point, I'll ask Krista if she could speak to a couple of elements of the contract.
Sure, is that, there's no, these don't
Oh,
have,
why are they not there?
these don't have the highlights in them.
There are highlights, really?
They're in white.
That's strange. I see.
Well, here's the.
There we go. Oh,
Okay.
And you gotta keep the.
It has motion.
there we go. Oh, you did tricky things,
Oh, there it is.
Krista. You did transitions.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let me preface by saying this was intended to be the third year of a 3-year contract with HESA. But the administration brought to the board's attention that we were having difficulty hiring essential staff, such as food service, custodians, and paras. And we were having difficulty hiring them at our step levels that we had currently. So in our contract, administrators are allowed to hire above the step level. And so in an effort to do that, they were hiring above the step levels. Well, this was troublesome to our current staff, being that new people were coming in who were not as experienced as them and making more money than them. And then if we continued on that path, that would continue, and that was very frustrating. So not only were we having trouble hiring people, we were going to have difficulty retaining them, which is understandable, and certainly almost every industry, I think, in the country was going through that same situation. So it gave us an opportunity to open up the contract and to look at the salary and to look at the tables, because we weren't just competing against other local districts, we were also competing against Target, Lowe's, everybody that was paying way more than we were at a starting wage. So, and our jobs, I think, are really difficult. They're working with students, and they're essential workers, and they're making a difference in these kids' lives, and we wanted to make sure that we retained the great employees that we already had, and were able to get more employees. So in order to do that, we opened up and re-examined the wage structure. And we cleaned up the salary tables significantly, so that they're a lot more even in between the steps, and make a lot more sense. Kelly was amazing in that role, as she always is. And we eliminated the base step. We added step 9. For this contract, we did retain our insurance caps that we had already anticipated having for this year in the third year. We increased our starting salary on the table to $15 an hour from $12.39. So there is a significant increase. If you can go to the next slide, please. So on step for the years 23, 24, there will be an increase between 8 and 9%, depending on where they are on the step table. Because of that, we had to do off-step and give them an increase of 8% as well. So we did, and the health insurance is at $18,000. So this is for now what we consider the third year of a 4-year contract, because we did add an additional year on, so that we're not negotiating again next year. So this year it is a little hefty increase for a total of $162,000, and it would have been $82,000 this year. But it's what absolutely needed to be done. I don't hesitate for 1 second to believe that. As a little side note, for our staff that were, other people were hired above them, we were fortunately able to use ESSER funds that were going to expire in May. And we used those to give bonuses to all of our employees who were already employed with us. We did it in 3 segments if they were employed by February of 2022. So they were able to get a bonus. And then we were able also to make sure people got put on the right step, so that no one was being cheated out of where they should be paid and where they would have been on the table. So those are the highlights.
Great, thank you. At this time, I'll open the floor for public input
At 6:55.
at 6:55. Thank you.
Drew Mason, Baxter Road, and I'm moderator of the district. I certainly approve of this change because we need our staff. But if I look at private sector, if in fact the inflation comes down a lot, the whole wage structure in private industry may change, the whole scene may change. Wages may in fact come down, who knows what's going to happen. Does the board have any thoughts in terms of year 5, effectively? I know I just threw you a curveball,
Year
but
5. Did we be reopening the contract in year 5 as well?
well,
So
I assume you'll be negotiating a brand-new contract for,
Yes,
okay.
but I have no thoughts. I don't know if anyone else
Yeah.
has, but no thoughts
Okay.
at this point.
But thank you for the input.
But thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Drew.
Seeing no other public input, I'll close public input on Article 2 at 6:56 PM.
Can I make a motion to approve the article?
No,
The warrant article?
we're going to do that later.
Okay.
We're in recess right now.
Oh, okay.
Can't do it.
Internal.
Okay, we're moving on to Article 3 for the operating budget, to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate a sum of $26,499,039 for the supportive schools for the payment of salaries for the school district officials and agents, and for the payment of statutory obligations of the district. This appropriation does not include appropriations voted in other articles. The School Board and Budget Committee will take positions subsequent to the public hearing. The estimated tax impact for Hollis is $7.63 per thousand, and for Brookline, $12.83 per thousand. So quickly just talking about the change for the operating budget, I would like to commend the administration for coming in below the Budget Committee's operating guidance, preliminary and final guidance numbers, so they came in below guidance twice, and rose to the challenge, I guess, that we put in front of them. So we're greatly appreciative of the efforts put forward by the administration to exceed our expectations and come below the guidance estimates that the Budget Committee reviewed. And at this point, looking at the $26 million $499,039 budget, that's a 3.5% increase off of this year's operating budget. The main categories of changes that we're looking at are some very minor changes in full-time equivalent or headcount, which includes a paraprofessional and half of an IT person, for maintenance and safety items. I think the most significant elements that were considered is the rigging system in the high school and a water tank installation. From a technology standpoint, we're continuing laptop replacement for staff and students, the installation of interactive flat panels, audio upgrades, and we're in a Chromebook replacement cycle at the middle school. From an academic standpoint, we have new textbook purchases across various subjects, program materials and equipment, updates to the literacy program, and updates to the middle school computer program and curriculum. In athletics, we're looking to the implementation of a fee structure for our coaching staff that addresses longevity. Because we're facing the same type of issues that we are in staffing our full-time positions as we consider staffing those extracurricular positions, and are evaluating a stipend proposal and to address longevity and keep some of the coaches that have been here for a longer period of time. Looking at the major increases in the budget, we see about a 1.8% or $159,000 increase in salaries. In programming, changes for student services, we're looking at an increase of a little over $275,000. As I mentioned, the change to some of the stipends in athletics, basically an increase in the athletic budget of a little over $32,000. Looking at replacement computers of $112,770, and new items which total $494,321. Decreases we're seeing on two parts of the retirement benefits. So the retirement benefit that's issued to our professional staff, we're seeing a decrease of $102,791 because we anticipate fewer teacher retirements in FY24. As a result of the biannual rate change for NHRS, we're looking at a reduction of professional staff contribution costs of $67,726. Professional development is going down by $16,700, and that's an adjustment to the budget based on trending actuals, and a reduction in some more of the consumable textbook and programmatic expenses of $27,477. So at this time, at 7:01 PM, I'll open public input for the operating budget.
Drew Mason Baxter Road. Will you be talking about Article 11 later?
Is that
the
That's the lobbying
the
one.
fees?
Yeah, the lobbying. Yeah,
I wasn't planning on addressing it.
okay. I'm facing something of a procedural conundrum,
Okay.
and I'm going to be asking Jim O'Shaughnessy for his advice. But we have an article that's the budget, and then we have an article to zero a line item on the budget, and I just am looking for guidance or opinions on the proper way to structure it at the annual meeting. So anybody wants to talk to me privately or here at the meeting, I'm open to suggestions.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, closing public input at 7:02 PM on Article 3. Moving on to Article 4, which is the SAU budget. Shall the district vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $1,140,822 as the Hollis Brookline Cooperative School District's portion of the SAU budget of $2,264,374 for the forthcoming fiscal year? This year's adjusted budget of $2,247,208 with $1,132,174 assigned to the school budget of this school district will be adopted if the article does not receive a majority vote of all the school district voters voting in this school administrative unit. The school board and budget committee will take positions at the conclusion of the public hearing. Estimated tax impact for Hollis is 33 cents per thousand, and for Brookline is 55 cents per thousand. I'll just mention, we'll say this at annual meeting, and Drew, you'll review this as well. This is the article where the SAU budget is shared among the three districts, and what you have an opportunity, the legislative body will have an opportunity to vote in each of the districts on the portion of the budget which gets allocated to that district. So this article addresses the portion of the budget that's allocated to the co-op. Holly, do you want
Yeah, sure, no problem. So in regards to the SAU budget, you'll see a difference of $161,198 or a 7.6% change. The drivers of this are board-approved support staff salary adjustments and associated benefits at $74,139 and budgeted salary and associated benefits at $82,254. These increases were determined by the SAU governing board, basically because we needed to retain our quality staff. We, as with everywhere across the school districts, are struggling to maintain and retain folks, and so we needed to give some adjustments, and some of these were adjustments and some of these were cost of living increases. Just to note, there were no new positions added, and the SAU budget is primarily driven by salary.
So at 7:05 PM, I'll open public input on Article 4. Seeing none, I will close the public input on Article 4 and move on to
75.
Article 5, which is the Facilities Maintenance Expendable Trust, to see if the school district will vote to raise and appropriate up to the sum of $300,000 to be added to the previously established School Building and Facilities Maintenance Expendable Trust Fund, the sum to come from the Hollis Brookline Cooperative School District's June 30, 2023 unassigned fund balance, available on July 1st, 2023. School Board and Budget Committee will take positions at the conclusion of the public hearing. The estimated foregone tax impact for Hollis is 11 cents per thousand, and Brookline is 19 cents per thousand. Just with a quick overview, the beginning balance of the current expendable trust is $123,066. The proposed funding adds $300,000 and will be utilized for projects in the middle school and high school. In the middle school, to address flooring, HVAC, and elevator maintenance and improvements, and at the high school to reseal Phase 8 of the roof and address road paving of, I believe it's the dirt lot, the student dirt lot at the lower portion of the school driveway. As a result of those anticipated expenses, the ending balance would be $136,866. So at this time, I'll open public input on Article 5 at 7:06 PM. Seeing none, we'll close public input. Moving on to Article 6, the Special Education Trust, to see if the Hollis Brookline Cooperative School District will vote to raise and appropriate up to the sum of $25,000 to come from the June 30, 2023 unassigned fund balance, available for transfer on July 1st, 2023, to be added to the previously established Special Education Expendable Trust Fund, no amount to be raised from taxation. The School Board and Budget Committee will take positions later this evening. The estimated foregone tax impact for Hollis is $0.01 per thousand, and for Brookline, 2 cents per thousand. Open public input on Article 6 at 7:07 PM. And close it as no public input is forthcoming. Moving on to Article 7, shall the school district vote to authorize the school board to continue to retain year-end unassigned general funds in an amount in any fiscal year not to exceed 2.5% of the current fiscal year's net assessment in accordance with RSA 198:4-BA, 2, as amended in 2020, which requires the school board to hold one public hearing before expending this retained fund balance, and requires the school board to provide an accounting of the activities of this retained fund balance to the district in its annual report. Majority vote required. No. The school board is currently authorized to retain up to 1% of the district's net assessment in year-end unassigned general funds as an ongoing contingency fund. However, RSA 198:4-B was amended in 2020. Thus, failure to pass Article 7 will cast doubt on the school board's continued authorization to retain up to 1% under the new version of the law. The Board and Budget Committee will take positions at the conclusion of tonight's public hearing. Is there any public input on the retained fund balance, Article 7? Opening the floor at 7:08.
Drew Mason, Baxter Road, Hollis. Same issue with Article 12. We have two that basically address the same point. And that's the first time I've had to deal with that in any of the districts. What I've heard from other moderators is they basically bring up the discussion on both at the same time, but voting has to be separate. And I have no idea what happens if one passes and the other one doesn't. Or if
they
both
both
pass.
pass is the
If they
issue.
both pass, or neither passes, it's like, this is why we have district lawyers. All right, so.
Thank you.
Okay, closing it, public input at 7:09. We'll move on to Article 8, the contingency, to see if the school district will vote to establish a contingency fund for the current year for unanticipated expenses that may arise, and further to raise and appropriate up to $125,000 to go into the fund. This sum to come from the unassigned fund balance, available on July 1st, 2023, and no amount to be raised from taxation. Any appropriation left at the end of the year will lapse to the general fund. The School Board Budget Committee will take positions at the conclusion of the public hearing. estimated foregone tax impact is 5 cents per thousand in Hollis and 8 cents per thousand in Brookline. Is there any, I'll open the floor to public input at 7:10 PM. Seeing none, close the floor for public input on Article 8 and move on to Article 9. Oh, okay, so Article 8, I was on a roll there. Article 8 is the conclusion of the School Board and Budget Committee articles for the warrant. The remaining five articles that are listed are petition warrant articles, and I'll go over the topics. I'm not going to read them into the record. I don't think I need to at this point. So we have a petition warrant article in Article 9, which is the article that would change, it looks like change the voting majority necessary to amend the Articles of Agreement. That one will have its public hearing, as Superintendent Corey noted, on the 16th, February 16th in Brookline and the 20th in Hollis.
There is no required public hearing for that.
Oh, there's no required
So
public hearing for
so
that one.
tonight is just a notice to community. There's only two that require public hearing.
Which ones require the public hearing?
The,
Tax cap and the grievance.
You said the
I'm
tax.
sorry, you're,
Was it the tax cap?
no, the Articles of Agreement and the tax cap, I'm
So
sorry.
this
so it
one,
is this
so
one.
this one does.
Yes, so this one does.
You are
So this
correct.
one will have the two public hearings.
Right.
So February 16th at CSDA and
And the
February
20th.
20th here.
Here.
What's the time at CSDA?
What time is the SAU meeting? What time is the SAU meeting?
Adjusted based on the public hearing at 6:30. We haven't decided yet.
Okay, so if we do the SAU at 6, we can do the public hearing at 6:30. Yep, so the public hearing will be 6:30.
For both.
The SAU meeting will be 6.
That's also at CSDA?
Correct.
Oh, it is?
I had it down
Yes.
for Hollis.
Yes, we're gonna
Move it.
have to flip that because that's the, I'm away at the national conference, so we need one body at 2 meetings.
So we're at 6, the public hearing will be at
6:30, correct.
Just the opposite.
No, actually,
No.
that's the way it is,
Yeah.
but generally, the board hasn't attended the public hearings. These public hearings.
We're meeting at 6 and the public hearing's at 6:30?
So
Correct.
we're meeting as an SAU governing board at 6, and then Gina will run the public hearing at 6:30, and I'll step out of governing board and join her, just as board chair.
Who will be running the meeting, the rest of the meeting?
That meeting is the non-public on my evaluation only, so nobody's usually in attendance once we do finish the public session. So Gina will be there for the public session, and then you go into non-meeting for my evaluation.
We'll probably be done by 6.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, moving on to Article 10 is a petition warrant article to institute a 5% tax cap. Again,
That also needs a
that
public hearing.
requires a public hearing, which will take place on the 16th in Brookline and the 20th in Hollis, with both Board and Budget Committee taking positions. Board and Budget Committee can take positions on any of these articles. I'll just say that, so I don't have to repeat it every time.
And what's
I think the
time?
Articles of
Start time
Agreement
is
one,
that
it's just the school board.
Immediately
It's just the school
following,
board,
Right.
right?
immediately following the previous one.
What do you mean the previous one?
So
They're
those,
gonna be on
You have
they'll
the
be
same
on
two
the
items for the public hearing,
Right, but when does the whole sequence start?
6:30.
6:30.
Okay, so 9 and 10 are at those meetings. Article 11 does not require a public hearing and is a request to zero out account 1023-810, which is the fees for the school board. Petition Article 12 is to eliminate the percentage under RSA 198-4B for the retained fund balance, so that would eliminate the 1% and reduce it to 0, and rescind our participation with the retained fund balance. And Article 13 is the tax impact on the warrant. And Article 14 is any other business which may legally come before the meeting. So since I'll give, it's been light on public input for this evening, I'll give it at 7:15, one more opportunity for the public to make any comments. Seeing none, closing the public hearing on the FY '24 warrant at 7:15 PM. If you could just scroll down one more, great.
Great. So now we need to reconvene as a school board, so we've just done that.
And a budget committee, we're reconvening now. So this is the opportunity for boards to review the articles that were presented and have a discussion, make their recommendations, and
Great, so do you want to slide back to the slides and just so that put each article up
Yep.
on the thing?
can you go back to Article 1? Like,
There are two, actually, because we're not
well, do
going
we
to talk.
want to just talk about?
Oh, talk about
Just-
Article
We're
1,
going to talk
okay.
about Article 1. yeah. Slide 16. Oh, those transitions are learner. They're so fancy.
That's another 3 seconds.
You can keep going. You can keep backing up. 2 more.
There we go.
That one.
Okay, if I can, I had passed out a note. It started a draft bond warrant article, and it was advice from Jim O'Shaughnessy, our attorney. As we started our due diligence to move forward with the lease piece, we began to investigate a couple different things, and we discovered what is called by our attorneys a technical defect. And that technical defect, to explain it as simply as possible, when we went through the entire process and went back to the Articles of Agreement, there is nowhere in the Articles of Agreement that has the word lease. Because the Articles of Agreement, when they were put together, there was only an option of a bond. And ultimately, we fall back to the Articles of Agreement. So after speaking with the DRA, Revenue Administration, the DOE, our attorneys, and our auditor, it was recommended that we turn the lease into a bond article. So nothing has changed. I'll read it for those at home. To see if the school district will vote to appropriate the sum of $3,076,806 gross budget to finance the acquisition and installation of energy-efficient LED lighting and propane boilers with associated costs for oil tank removal for both the Hollis Brookline High School and Middle School. To authorize the issuance of not more than $3,076,806 in bonds or notes in accordance with the provisions of Municipal Finance Act, RSA 33. To authorize the school board to issue, negotiate, and sell and deliver such bonds and notes, and to determine the rate of interest whereupon the maturity of the items, therefore, and to raise and appropriate an additional sum of $291,272 to pay debt service on such bonds and notes in 23-24 fiscal year, 3/5 ballot vote required. So from the standpoint of the article itself, nothing's changed. We're doing LED lighting, we're doing 2 boilers, we're adjusting the piping that goes from the boilers into the building, so that hasn't changed. The dollar amount hasn't changed. We're staying with the estimate of $291,272, which was the quotes, the middle quote that we had gotten, knowing that ultimately the school board would approve the rate and the term. What has changed is we'd be changing it from a lease to a bond, so that also changes it from a simple majority vote to a 3/5 vote would be required for a bond. The process would be that we would need to hold a bond hearing, just like we were going to hold a lease hearing tonight. We would notify the public with an advertisement in the paper and through various postings around the SAU and on the websites, that would be holding a bond hearing. That would take place on Monday, the 20th of February, and we would go through a similar process that we would have gone through tonight for the lease. And then the school board would would make the determination either tonight or at the next meeting if that warrant goes on the articles, because it's still the school board's prerogative to decide the warrant. We did not take any positions tonight. That would mean that they would not be available for the town report, but the budget and school boards could take positions at their next meeting, or actually the night of the annual meeting if they so choose. Okay?
The warrant articles will be in, though, correct?
Everything else we do tonight will be in.
No, but will it be in Article 1 in the,
If the board directs us to put an Article 1 in tonight, which I will be recommending, I think it should be in, because you can always pull the article the night of the meeting. Okay? So that's how we arrived at tonight. This has been 2 days of getting information. I will note that last year we went through this process. We did a lease. Our attorneys are aware of that, and they will be providing us information in the future of how to correct that. Just for the people at home, whenever you do a lease or a bond, it has to go through bond or lease counsel, which they go through everything to make sure you met the requirements. We were given that go-ahead last year because inadvertently, nobody noticed that the word lease is not until the article, in the Articles of Agreement until now. It specifically only talks about bond. The other recommendations that our attorneys have given us is that at some point in the future, we should hold a separate meeting to once again adjust the Articles of Agreement to kind of clearly define capital versus operations and to talk about bond versus lease. Okay? And I'd be happy to take any questions. I know from many of you, this is kind of a surprise. For us, it just started the other day. And as Darlene said, we probably finalized it around 4 o'clock today. So that's where we've arrived. I do want to thank Tom Solon and Darlene for all their efforts in working through this process so that we could identify this and correct it. Since I've been here, we've hit 2 other technical difficulties. One was in Hollis, where we actually had to cancel a bond vote the night of the bond because it didn't make the newspaper announcement through no fault of the district. The other last year, as Brian will recall, over in Brookline, there was a technical defect, and to correct that, we had to have a second meeting, and the voters had to affirm their vote from Election Day. So this is, it is not that uncommon, because there are so many different pieces that go through, and that's why you always run everything through bond or lease counsel. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to take them. What I'm recommending is that we publish this as Article 1, that we hold the bond hearing on the 20th, and that at a future meeting or the night of the annual meeting, the Budget Committee and the school board take positions on that specific article.
Do you
I have
need
a
a,
question. Assuming that each process is followed exactly perfectly, is there any, what is the comparison of potential risk to the district, one versus the other?
I wouldn't say there's no risk, because ultimately, once we secure, let's say, 15 years at X rate, that has to come back to the school board and with a final vote. They're authorized in the wording that that's their final job. So that 291,272 is an estimate. That was a lease estimate, and traditionally, lease interest rates have been higher. What you do lose sometimes when you go with a bond is the flexibility to refinance, which a lease gives you much more flexibility to do that. But you traditionally will probably see a slightly better interest rate with the bond.
Just, seems that we get caught up in a lot of the verbiage of what's what. I understand the differences, but is there, we're trying to catch all, as a rent to buy now, if something was out and you decided to do that because it was favorable, would that have to be readdressed the same way? And would this be a time to grab that other definition as well?
I think I would suggest sooner rather than later on the Articles of Agreement, maybe this coming fall. That way we'd be all set for next budget cycle, because there are opportunities, especially, I'll give you an example. I wasn't that familiar with leases when I came to town. Working with the Board of Selectmen, I learned an awful lot about leases. They traditionally use them for fire trucks, police cars, and those type of things. So there are times when they can come in very handy, because to your point, there may be a reason we want to do something at such and such a time. We have always made determination of construction versus equipment. That's how we've segmented bonds. Like, we did the turf field because it was construction via a bond. We did last year's energy project because it was all machinery and rooftop units as a lease.
So what do you need from the board in order to move that language forward to Article 1? Do you need just a general consensus, or do you need a vote?
I would appreciate a vote from the school board moving it to Article 1, and then depending on the comfort level of the boards, you can take positions on it tonight, which would appear in the town piece. I'm not saying that has to be done, but as Jim told me, there's nothing that prevents you from taking votes on any of the articles, even those like the tax cap and that have not had public hearings.
So can the board just quickly discuss whether or not you want to, we'll take a vote on whether or not to put it forward, so I need to discuss that quickly, and then also if you want to take positions on it tonight. Anyone?
I think we should go ahead and put it on there. Like we said, we could always pull it off if we need to, but we need to have something in writing for people to digest.
And you feel like you're ready to take a position on it tonight, or would you rather wait and not have us be in the, it won't be on the warrant? Thank you, language.
I mean, if we're gonna put it on there, I think we could take a
Position, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay with that?
Okay, you good, Krista, Tom? All right, okay, so I need can I just say motion to put the language? Motion to put this language on the warrant as Article 1. Moved by Beth,
Second.
second by Cindy, sorry. Any discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor for moving it forward? So 6-0, so it's it'll go on the warrant and in the town report and all of that. Okay, do we want to discuss any further before taking a position on it? Tom?
I'm not ready to take a position on it, but that's fine.
Okay.
Everyone else is, that's their prerogative.
Okay.
I'll sit with the budget committee and ask if you're comfortable taking a position on it this evening, or you'd rather wait until after hearing the public.
I just have a quick question, Andy. Was the advice from council that we are not allowed to enter into a lease because of the wording? Or,
Yes.
okay, that's their advice.
In talking with Greg M., who's our lease bond counsel, knowing what we've learned in the last few days, he would not be able to authorize the lease to move forward because technically it's not talked about in the Articles of Agreement.
So it's a bond or nothing?
Correct.
Okay, that's what I want to clarify. Thank you.
Okay,
Go ahead, Brian.
I personally would rather us take a position on it after a public hearing, because part of the purpose of the public hearing is to provide public input to us for it. So us taking a position on it before actually having a public hearing kind of devalues the public hearing, in my opinion.
that's a pretty valuable point.
Any other input?
Can we take a vote on the sense of the budget committee?
Well, that's what I'm kind of just asking for, just looking at, if you feel comfortable, or would.
Lease is not an option, but if it was a lease, we would be taking a position on it tonight. So I don't see why we don't.
But we would have held the hearing on it. This would have been the hearing for it.
Right, it would-
tonight, whereas we didn't, we skipped over it this time.
Right, I mean, it was listed as a lease hearing, and we don't have a lot of public in attendance this evening, so,
It's the same dollar amount.
Yeah.
basically.
Nothing changes.
Voting on this, or less, possibly.
Probably less because of the interest rate.
Right.
right, and the way, if we were to.
It was noticed as a public hearing, so the fact that we didn't have it, that's kind of put us in a weird,
So this would be the public hearing for that, right?
well,
Yes,
but-
Nobody, but it was
Nobody
for a
chose.
lease, not a.
but you're scheduling a public hearing for it, though,
Correct,
in the
yes.
future.
Which is when, the 20th or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we meet again when?
We
the night
could
of.
choose to meet on the 20th,
Or you can do
or we
it
could meet right before
we could
the,
do it
at the
now.
annual meeting.
Right,
But it
but
won't,
At the table, we could do it now.
but it won't make the document that people have in front of them
Right.
if we don't take a position tonight.
right, so all the other articles will have positions or,
Right,
and
and that'll leave a lot of
acceptance.
unopened as to why we didn't take position on it. I say we take positions tonight.
I think we should take a position. I think this is just a technicality of why we need to schedule a public hearing, especially given that our legal counsel advised us to change it, so I think we should go ahead and press.
Is that the
Okay.
consensus of this board as well? Because I don't want to take a position and have you all okay. All right, so I need a motion by the board to recommend Article 1 as discussed. Moved by Beth,
Second.
second by Kate. And all in favor of making the recommendation? 5 against, abstentions.
Is that extension
Is abstention an option?
Sure.
Yeah, yeah, it's an option.
Usually it's just 4 and against, are there 3? Okay.
I think you
We
can
can
abstain
take-
if you want. Is that an abstention, Tom? Okay, so it's 5 yays, 0 nays, and 1 abstention from the school board.
Okay, from the Budget Committee, I'll take a motion to recommend Article 1 with bond language as proposed and discussed.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Raoul, seconded by Matt. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstention? Okay, it's
I think
701.
Cindy, you were supposed to vote if you want.
Yeah, yeah, 701. Okay. Yeah, it's 8 in total.
Okay, I think we got through the
Every time.
confusing part.
Every
Now
time.
let's just go right through.
Okay.
The other confusing parts.
Yeah.
So Article 2, the support staff contract, I'll take a motion to recommend the support staff
I
contract.
actually had a question I'd like to throw at. So there was discussion for the HESA contract about what happens in year 3, but it was also mentioned that it was extended to year 4. What's in year 4?
Year 4 is just an addition, I believe it's 82,000? Yeah, like 82,000, what a normal, this is just the bump because of the tables changing.
All right.
And there's no additional caps, insurance caps in year 4, so it's
Okay,
always.
and no other special provisions that kick in
No,
in year 4?
not at all.
And it's
Okay,
not a
great. Thank
San
you.
Bernard's contract. It's not San Bernard's, right?
It's not San
It's
Bernard's.
not a San Bernard's contract.
So it will
Yeah,
come up.
but- yeah, great.
Okay, I'll take a motion to recommend Article 2 as written.
So moved. Second.
Great. All those in favor? Unanimous, 8-0 for the Budget Committee.
I have to abstain.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. 7-0.
7-0, and
One.
Raoul's abstaining. Thank you, I'm sorry about
Okay.
that.
And I need a motion by the board to recommend Article 2 as presented. Moved by Beth, second by Kate. All those in favor of recommending Article 2? 6-0.
Take a motion to recommend Article 3, the operating budget as written from Raoul, seconded by Matt. Any discussion?
I think
Seeing
it's a
none,
reasonable
there
budget.
better not be at this point.
That's what we've been doing for months now.
Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions, 8-0.
And I need a motion by the board to recommend Article 3 as presented. Moved by Beth,
Second.
second by Cindy. Is there any discussion on this? Comments? I want to thank the Budget Committee and the administration for all their hard work on this budget. We appreciate the time and effort, and we know it's extensive. At this point, I'd like a vote. All those in favor? 6-0.
Article 4, the SAU budget, I'll take a motion to approve the article as written, to recommend the article as written from
So moved.
Raoul, seconded by Matt. All those in favor, any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous, 8-0.
I also need a motion to recommend Article 4 as presented. Moved by Beth. Second, please.
Second.
By Kate. For any discussion? Okay. Again, thank you to the SAU Budget Committee. And all in favor? 6-0.
Article 5, the Facilities Expendable Trust. Take a motion for the Budget Committee to recommend the Article 5 for the Facilities Trust as written.
So moved.
From Raul, seconded by Matt. All those in, any discussion? All those in favor? 8-0.
I need a motion to recommend Article 5 as presented from the school board. So moved by Beth.
Second.
Second by Kate and Cindy. Any discussion? All those in favor? 6-0. Oh,
One more.
5,
Who's asking?
2, 1 nay? Okay. Oh, that's right. I'm not surprised by that. Thank you. 5-1.
For the
Sorry,
spe-
Tom.
For the Special Education Trust, take a motion to approve Article 6 as written.
So moved.
From Raul, seconded by Matt. Any discussion? All those in favor? 8-0.
I need a motion by the board to recommend Article 6 as presented. Moved by Beth, second
Second.
by Cindy. Any discussion? All those in favor? 6-0.
Okay, moving on to Article 7 for the retained fund balance. Take a motion for the Budget Committee to recommend the article as written from Raul, seconded by Matt. Any discussion?
Yeah, I just want to say that even though this is a good idea, the timing may not be exactly right. And given the fact that there have been a number of increases in other areas and other warrant articles, I think we should maybe consider delaying this until next year. So I'm going to be opposing this article.
Any other comments?
Just, go ahead.
After
Go ahead, Tony.
careful review and listening to people in the community, I think we have to be a little more conservative. And I would agree the 1%. I think that's what
Yeah.
Raul's recommending.
You know, it's a matter of risks versus adding another several $100,000 from the unreserved fund balance. And I'd rather see some money given back to the district if money's available.
Quick question. Andy, it's advice from council that should we not agree to this, that we would not necessarily be authorized to even retain the 1% because we haven't reauthorized the revised RSA?
That's correct. And on the side of wanting the article, 2.5% would cover a large unit that we need to do. But at the same time, for those people trying to manage, the multiple points, we have done most of our large units, and if we were to pass the bond this year, that would take out a large number of other potential capital improvement projects. So I do worry about the risk, and I just put that out there. Because again, the voters have continually across the SAU stepped up over the last couple of years, and I do think we need this, but at the same time, I've always tried to balance, the overall budgets of everything. And, 1% of a $26 million budget is $260,000. Now, if we had one of our major units go, let's call it a rooftop unit, that'd be the most expensive piece of a boiler. We know the high school boiler, because we have a quote on that, is over $1 million. I don't know if we could find $800,000 in a budget. So that's my worry on that side. So if the bond didn't pass and a boiler went, I don't know where I'd find that money.
So, just the question. If we ask for more money, we give them more money in something like $1 million item, what would be the process?
Well, if it was a boiler, obviously the first thing is, can we do a short-term repair to get us through that winter into the next annual meeting? Because I think if you go to voters and say, we managed to get through the year, but we need a boiler, it's $1 million, I believe we'll get community support from both communities. If it was to be taken out, had to be replaced, And then we start to look at what's in the maintenance trust, things of that nature. We might be running a surplus like we had the last couple of years, but I think that surplus will dwindle as we fill more positions, because the brunt of those surpluses have been open positions of returning those tax dollars. So I think there's some risk, but it has to be what I'll call a major item, Tony. So the boilers are a $600,000 rooftop vent. I think under that, we could probably find it in the budget. Wouldn't be easy, and we'd probably have to freeze the budget and take some steps, but, that's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, emergencies are emergencies.
Right, exactly.
Something of that magnitude, something has to be done. We
Right.
can't shut down the schools, and we have to heat the schools, and so on and so forth. So my concern is the appetite for the community, and believe me, I've listened to quite a few people, and listening to them and listening to the concerns with getting hit up all around, increasing that amount is something that I think would reach a lot of resistance. And
And I
it
don't-
would sour a lot of things.
And I don't disagree, because I look at what I know is the increase in Brookline, and what I know is the increase in Hollis. And in both those districts, we saw special ed costs that have to be funded increased, and those costs are on the way. So I think it needs to be done. If you're asking me, does it need to be done in this year's budget? I think there's a little flexibility, because we've started to address a lot of our capital pieces. Most of our roofs are in good shape. We've done quite a bit of paving. We've done the ventilation systems. So my areas of concern really are those two boilers.
What is
So-
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
What is the age of those? I mean, they're
One's
originals?
30 years, and the other's 25.
Our risk is increasing.
I wouldn't put my money in that one. Yeah.
Right.
My whole life is expect the worst, hope for the best. And if you don't plan for it and it's gonna go, then what are you gonna do?
Right.
So, I feel comfortable with you guys that if you don't need it, you're not gonna spend it, obviously, if you can get somewhere else.
So just to give a little context to the RSA language, just as a reminder, when the legislation was updated, the maximum allowed not to exceed percentage is actually by law 5%. So there are, other districts have looked at their own conditions and things like that. Right now, HSD, Hollis School District has a 2.5%, correct? And Brookline has a 2% retained fund balance. For our district, the 1% that was approved is in the range of like $189,000. And it is, and we don't have a contingency line in the budget. So, and it is an up to, or not to exceed. So authorizing whatever percentage doesn't mean it has to be funded at all. It just allows the opportunity, so if you were at the end of the year, when you're assessing what your retained fund balance can be, or what you would like to retain, because it is retained by a motion of the board at the end of every fiscal year. It's at that point where the board, and based on input from the business office and the administration, who puts the recommendation forward to determine what that amount in a dollar amount would be. So it just gives the latitude of up to 2.5%. My concern with not approving the 2.5% language is the notation on the bottom. So the problem, and the problem as I see it, is if we move forward with this and it says, oh, we don't support it, we risk the 1%. So if this just gets voted with no change, we've lost the 1% also.
Can I make a comment? If it is that important, maybe this should be ahead of the other two warrant articles that are depending on the unfunded, on the unassigned fund balance. In other words, change the order so that this is highest priority. This is really the concern. That's one issue. The other issue is, when we had this discussion within the budget committee, we looked at 1.5%, 2%, and the sense of the group was 2.5%. I feel that that's a little high given everything else. So if, there is accepting some risk, there is, if this is really a priority, maybe we should move up in the order of the warrant articles, so is the first priority for funding it. But to leave it as a last warrant article, which infers that we're not really that concerned about it, but then assign a high percentage number is inconsistent in the argument. That's how I see it. And so I'm not opposed to maybe changing the number. I'm not opposed to changing the order in which it appears. So I think we should have some consistency about it. So when I thought about all of these factors, I figured, well, in my business, there are a lot of people that accept risk. So I don't mind accepting some risk, even though I'm concerned about the 30-year boiler. And maybe this is something we can defer to next cycle.
I agree with maybe moving it up, but I think key to me is it not to exceed 2.5. I have full trust in the administration. I'm not gonna say, oh, we got 2.5, let's do it. They'll do what they need to do.
So given that it's
Because
a...
for the first couple of years we had it, we didn't even fund it to the full 1%.
Yeah.
And
For
it's
3
the
years as
school
a whole,
board,
we had no
It's-
nothing.
and it's the school board that will make that determination, and we vote on it, and
Right.
we've been consistent and faithful to the taxpayers and returned significant portions of, money to them. So, and it would be up to the school board to decide to move the warrant. It's
To
our.
change the order.
To change the order, sorry,
Unless-
to move the article.
Right, unless
change
it's
it.
changed on the floor, right.
Right, it can be changed on the floor, but if we want to change it prior to printing, I think, it would have to be this body that would decide to change it.
I would support it if it was number one item in the order.
Number one item, I don't think
I
it can
mean,
be.
out of the warrant articles that are funded by the unassigned fund balance, it should be the first one there.
So above,
Is this a joint discussion?
Yes, it's a
Yeah.
joint discussion, Tom, please join in.
In general, the way that it's structured, and looking not at the percentage number, but the dollar amounts, and what's likely to be funded by it, I think that the 1% is insufficient for the intent of the fund, the intent of the money. But I'm very concerned about the structure and the risk. And I don't know the audience. I really don't. I don't know whether or not the 2.5 would make it to the vote and then be shot down. I can guarantee this will be a ballot vote. Historically, it's not going to be a hand vote. Depends who turns out and what's on it. I think that there's a lot of risk here. But I guess my question, sort of pose it to Andy. Do you want to swing for the fence, knowing that we might come up with nothing? Or would you rather have the sure thing? Do you want what's behind door number 2, or do you want what Carol Merrill is showing?
So swinging for the fence, 5%?
No, I'm saying the 2%.
2.5.
That's swinging for the fence.
5%.
No, I'm saying we can do up to 5%.
Right,
Right.
that's the
Well,
fence.
That's swinging the fence.
in this audience, I think 2.5 is, when you've got people saying that they won't even support the 2.5 right now. But I guess my question is, do you want to have it put to the vote to increase it, or would you rather stick with what you've got in the short game?
Well, I'd almost like to combine it with Article 8, because if there was going to be support for Article 8, all of a sudden, I've got a contingency and a 1%. Now I'm about $300,000, and I'm about halfway to a piece of equipment, or a third of the way to my boiler, which would be the largest comfort level we've had since we've been here. So, I mean, we would be making progress, and I do respect Tony and Raul's position, because I do know that people are concerned. People are very supportive and want to do what they can, but they're concerned. And it also concerns me that we have a citizen petition to take that 1% to zero anyways. So if this is viewed as reaching again, all right, and we've got the opposite, to me, it's a fine line. So if you were going to say that we thought we could get number 8, and that the school board was going to have a $300,000 in 2 pools, plus a special ed pool, all right?
Leaving it at 1% and get 8, or going to 2.5 and get 8?
I mean, I'm very conservative, so I think I could survive
But
at
where's your 300 number coming from?
1% and 125.
Okay.
Because I'm looking at, to Darlene's number, about 180, and then the 125, that gets me a long way. And we're right now projecting a surplus in this year's budget. So if the warrant article didn't pass for a boiler, we could look at a portion of a boiler out of this year's fund.
So I think the question, though, is, do you want to try for 2.5%? I mean, that's the question that we're being asked, is do we want to try for 2.5% with the potential of losing everything, which is what I think you're saying, Tom. Like, if we shoot for 2.5, we could end up with 0. The only thing that we have to save us at that point would be, then we'd have the contingency, Article 8,
Yep.
that we could then hopefully get to pass, because people would see that we will be really down to dire straits. But I agree, Tom, that I'm concerned about the risk, but I'm going to vote in favor, I would vote in favor of both of these with the hope that the community will see that we need to have some contingency monies for things like boilers and, things like that. So whichever way the community goes, they may go for both, they may only go for one, but I think it's up to them to decide. And I think as a school board, we have to recommend what's best. I don't think we can predict what the voters are going to do, and that's not how we should make these decisions. It's like, we should decide what's best. And what's best is to have some money in case a boiler breaks, and we don't have money for the boiler, or in case of...
When you say we should, I think that's
That's my
an
idea.
altruistic view, and
Well, that's
if you
kind of
think
who I am.
that means we should ask for 5 because 5 would be better. But
Well, a conservative
realize that
ask,
I'm
right.
wondering if, one of my concerns is that perception is that this is a slush fund. Because it's undefined where it can be spent. From what Andy has just said, I'm wondering if Article 8, which has a defined purpose, well, I don't know. Does a contingency differ from how the unassigned fund balance is addressed?
Yeah,
How so?
because it's a line item in the budget, so it can be spent.
School board has control over it once it's passed.
You don't need a public hearing to expend the funds. The retained
I'm just
fund balance
wondering
needs a
if-
public
if
hearing.
Which one is more likely to gain support, I guess, in that question? Because the way the order is now, personally, I think you might get one, but you won't get both. And I guess the question is, which one will have more support, and which one do we want to prioritize? I don't know if that thought is expressed in the current order, if the order is there just because that's how someone placed it.
I like to play poker, and if I was doing this, I would actually leave it the way it is, but move it up in the order. And its chances are it will
Only
get
the one
passed.
or both?
Pardon me?
Only the one or both?
No, just Article 7 to
Yeah.
be number 5, I guess, or, right?
I wouldn't move Article 8. I feel like it should,
And
well, it could
leave
become 7, but it...
Yeah, leave Article 8 where it is.
Yeah, I think the special ed trust needs to go.
Thank you, this discussion's been helpful for me. Thank you.
But I think it will have some, and again, I think it would bring it up for discussion. I think people would support it.
Yeah, I think it's a statement that it's prioritized by us.
Right.
I'm wondering
being
if
that
we should-
important.
Do we have a motion right now?
We don't have a motion on the floor right now.
I'm wondering if we should, based on what this discussion is, make a motion to reorder the articles first before we take the vote, because it sounds like it will impact some positions.
Right.
Right, well, we already voted on 5 and 6, but yes, you can reorder what's left. Would you like to make that motion, Tom?
Well,
No?
We have a existing motion from the budget committee.
We do?
They said no.
Well, we're still holding, so we haven't,
Yeah, I know you haven't done that, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
you had done Raoul had made a motion.
Okay.
And Matt,
Can I
So
make
we're
a-
still waiting, we're not voting
Can I make a
yet.
motion to amend the motion?
How about you, I would rather
Can he
you
withdraw-
withdraw it.
can he withdraw the
I would rather you
motion?
withdraw it.
Can I make a suggestion about
Yeah, go
about
ahead,
a
Tom.
likely scenario? This is all going to the voting public. They're free to make amendments from the floor. Is that correct? So if we present what we want at a public or a annual meeting, and the public decides, well, I like the concept, and I know we don't want to lose the 1%, why wouldn't they just offer to change it to 1% and vote on whether they want to make the change, and then vote on whether to pass it? Why do we have to hand-wring about 1% or 2.5% when we don't make the ultimate decision?
Because I think the people who are opposed to it are opposed to it at any percentage.
Then they have Article 12.
No, but my point is, in secret ballot, they will speak against it.
They have to prevail, though.
Right, but I don't know what's gonna prevail on a simple majority. It depends on any night who shows up, Tom.
Oh, I agree with that, but they don't usually prevail.
So did you withdraw your motion, Raul?
I'll make a motion to withdraw my
You're just gonna
original
withdraw.
motion.
Okay, we're
Okay.
just back.
Does someone from the school board want to make a motion to reorder the warrant? Does anyone want to do that?
So I just have a question about, you had said we'd already voted through Article 6, so you can't reorder anything prior, but reordering it,
I think we
No,
can,
we can
we can
reorder
reorder
it.
it.
Yeah.
We can reorder
Yeah.
it and change the numbers, yes.
okay.
Do you see any downside to such an action?
I would want to know what you would suggest for order before I answer that question.
I think it's like 8 before 5.
Put 8?
Seven
You mean
before 5.
7 before 5. So 7 would be after the SAU portion budget. It would be the first of the funds. It would be the first of the
Funded
articles
by
related to
the
funds.
unassigned fund balance.
Correct.
I mean, I'd be concerned that maintenance trust has been the backbone of our taking care of our buildings. I mean, and that's probably the single, I would say, most important thing that the business office has done is establish that,
That's what I'm asking.
that not only the maintenance trust fund, but the articles that would, what's in there. Because if you look, I mean, that's stage 8 of the roof is this year for $100,000. That's $2 million on roofing that we broke down over the last several years to avoid a bond and interest. And now for the next cycle, when roofing comes up again, it's not all due at once. So I really think when I look at that maintenance and the work that's gone into that, that worries me moving it.
What about 7 before 6?
Yes, so I could argue that 5 and 6 are both maintenance, and number 5 is paying for things that are being done when you think about it.
Yep.
And so I think that's a better,
I could
that's a
support,
better order, and I think it's still consistent.
So make 7 Article 6 and make Article 6 Article 7.
Correct.
So basically move the special education trust
Right.
after.
right. I could support that because I'm legally mandated to find the $25,000 if we don't have it. So it's gonna happen no matter what. So
And that's a
putting.
lot easier to find.
Right, exactly, right, yeah. So
We've got
I
2
can,
decide in there right now.
Right.
right, I can support doing that.
So does someone from the board want to make a motion to move Article 7 to become Article 6?
So moved.
Moved by Krista, second by Beth. Is there any more discussion on this from the school board? All those in favor of making that change? 6-0. So I hope the moderator has noticed and you've noticed
We
that,
got it.
okay? Okay, so now we're back to discussing what is Article 7 now, which was actually going to become Article 6. So do you want to?
So I'll take a motion from the Budget Committee to recommend the retained fund balance at 2.5%,
So move.
no matter what number it is.
So move.
Moved by Raul, seconded by Matt. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of recommending the retained fund balance at 2.5%? Oh, unanimous, great, thank you.
Great, and at this point, I'll take a motion by the board to recommend Article 7, well, to recommend the retained fund balance article as presented. Moved by Beth, seconded by Kate. Is there any other discussion on this, or further discussion? Okay, all in favor? 6-0. Okay.
I guess we aired it out successfully.
The contingency article for $125,000. I'll take a motion from the Budget Committee to recommend that article from
I make a motion.
Raul, seconded by Matt.
Sorry, I was reading, I'm sorry.
Sorry. I don't know if there's any discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous, 8-0.
Great, and I need a motion by the school board to recommend Article 8 as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Beth, second.
Second.
Second by Cindy. Any discussion on this?
I would like to understand what this is intended to fund and what differs from what would likely be a reason to use the unassigned fund balance.
The retained fund balance.
Well,
Or you mean
the retained
instead
portion.
of the unassigned fund balance? Because there's the retained fund balance, the contingency, the unassigned fund balance, and the retained fund balance.
What are you calling what would be that 2.5%?
The retained fund balance.
So what would be the decision point on whether to fund through the retained fund balance or the contingency? Assuming there is money in both.
I would go to the contingency first as a line item. That might be if enrollment went up exponentially and we needed a teacher. If something came to the board from a curriculum or standpoint, from now until the fall, which is a long time, that the board felt we should fund. But I wouldn't go there first. My goal always would be, can I find what the board wants to do in the operating budget? If I can't find it in the operating budget, then I go to the contingency. I don't.
That's the hierarchy.
That's, yes. And my goal is always to stay away from the retained fund balance unless it's an absolute necessity, that boiler, things like of that nature.
And what was clarified before is the contingency can be authorized by the board. The retained fund balance requires a hearing to expend from it, but it's still a board decision.
Yes.
And the use of it has to be included in the annual report. So if you do use funds from the retained fund balance, it has to be reported in that as well.
And when we used to have a contingency, we had the gentleman's agreement that we would always inform the budget committee prior to that, so I would continue to do that because of our relationship with them. And I feel the same way about the unreserved fund balance. It would have to be something that they would know about too.
And I think ultimately it's about giving him flexibility to manage all of this, given whatever happens.
Is there any further discussion from the school board? Okay, all in favor of Article 8? 6-0.
Article 9 is the petition article for a 2/3 supermajority to amend the Articles of an Agreement. It's looking for a school board recommendation.
So I need a motion to recommend this article. We will talk about it after we put it on the floor. Moved by Beth, second
Second.
by Cindy. Can you speak to that, or?
Well, I wanted to ask a question. This would be for any article brought forth. Does that include apportionment when it comes up again?
That's my question.
Because if it does, that to me is a monetary question, and I feel the Budget Committee should take a position on that. Because a supermajority could guarantee an apportionment formula for many years. So I just put that out there. I don't know, I didn't write the petition, I just tried to go through and look at positive, negatives, and that's my concern. Apportionment has to come up. I don't think it's been a supermajority prior to this, and I would feel that this is, which to me is a financial impact.
So you feel like the Budget Committee should take a position on this?
I feel that I needed to notify the Budget Committee of that, and then they can determine if they wish to take a position.
I can say that there is a perception from the people who have put this forth that it explicitly does affect apportionment, as that was one of the reasons given to me as driving for this.
With
Okay.
that information, the budget committee will be taking a position
Okay.
on this one.
Okay, but in the meantime, we're still over here, so, do we have anything, we've got some legal information on this, should we be notifying the public of that? Like that, there's a conflict because,
There is a conflict between another article in our agreement in terms of what it takes to pass things and this, but from legal counsel, it's a legal article as written. So therefore, it goes on the warrant. Council will be present the night of the meeting to explain that potential conflict, so everybody understands that when voting.
Did
And
they
that,
say whether or not there is a hierarchy here based on how recent something is? That would this have precedence over an existing article because it's newer?
that would be one of his arguments to defend the position of the board. But at the same time, it would be ultimately, if it went to a judge, decided by a court.
so at this point, school board can take a vote, all in favor of recommending the petition warrant Article 9. All those opposed? So it's 0-6. And the school board does not recommend.
So I'll take a motion from the budget committee to recommend petition article.
I'd just like to say, again, we're scheduled to have a public hearing.
This one
on-
doesn't have a public.
It doesn't
hearing.
have a.
No, this
public
one
hearing.
does.
No, this one does.
This one does.
This one does.
Yes,
Oh,
this
it
one
is. I'm
does-
sorry,
This
I'm
one
sorry,
does
I'm
have
sorry.
a public
Yep.
hearing, and we haven't heard from the public on that at all. So if we're gonna vote on it tonight, I will abstain for that reason, but but I'm not in favor of the warrant article.
Just so you know, I did ask that question, and the attorney said that neither board had to wait for the public hearing on these articles. So you could take your positions tonight. There was always the opportunity, if you felt strongly at annual meeting, to take a vote prior to that and change any position.
I'll take a motion for the budget committee to recommend warrant article, petition warrant article addressing change.
Take a motion to open up for discussion.
No, after we take the motion, the floor will be open for discussion of the
Yeah.
motion. So if we're going to take a motion with the budget committee to recommend Article 9, the petition warrant article, changing the articles of agreement, voting thresholds two-thirds, a two-thirds supermajority.
I'll make it.
From Raul, seconded by Matt. Now we're open for discussion.
I'm endowing when it comes to stuff like this. I'm always suspicious. So I want to know, what are some of the examples that come to mind when somebody reads this? I'm not a lawyer, but I
Maybe
want
to
to
help,
understand the motivation.
maybe to help answer your question, I just wanted to ask Andy, for the sake of the public listening, what does this change?
This would mean that the current articles of agreement, each of them, if they were to be changed, would need a supermajority of 3/5.
Right now, we have 3/5?
Right now, we have the majority.
Okay, because this is saying two-thirds.
Two-thirds, okay, the article's saying two-thirds.
Yeah.
Which is over and above, which is now required, because if I'm passing a bond is 3/5, or, so that's usually the highest threshold. So this is going above even that threshold. But let's say, as a school district, you decided that you needed the space for grade 7 and 8, so you wanted to propose sending or expanding the 2 elementary districts up to grade 8. That would need a supermajority to pass. Apportionment would need a supermajority to pass.
Changing the language to have definition of a lease
Right,
would require two-thirds.
That's correct.
Any change whatsoever, for whatever reason, would require two-thirds rather than.
So it's
two-thirds.
taking
And
a
so-
lot of flexibility away from managing and this whole process, really. It's making it a lot more difficult to appropriate funds.
Well, it's making it almost like a constitutional convention kind of thing where
Yeah.
it wants, it's saying, don't mess with it unless you've got a whole lot of support for it.
So, and to this point, really, the only changes we've had to the Articles of Agreement have been for apportionment and for the kind of
Cleanup.
We cleaned it
cleanup
up,
things you
yeah.
did when the articles were referencing, the inception of the co-op, or just something that wasn't even relevant.
Junior high school, yeah.
Yeah, things like that. So really, the only thing we've changed with the Articles of Agreement is apportionment. Is that a pretty fair statement?
That's the only thing we regularly anticipate coming up,
Yes.
And that's done once every 5 years.
at most.
Doesn't have to be done every 5 years.
Yeah,
Correct.
you can't do it more frequently than 5 years. But you don't have, in fact, we waited 7 years prior to the most
First
recent
time we changed.
significant change.
Does anyone need any more information?
No.
Okay, all those in favor of recommending the change to a 2/3 supermajority in the Articles of Agreement? Opposed? Abstentions? 071, with Brian abstaining.
Okay, so we're up to petition warrant Article 10. This is the tax cap. So I just need a motion by the board to recommend Article 10.
So moved.
Beth, second by
Second.
Cindy. And this will also be publicly heard on February 16th and the 20th. But we have seen this petition warrant article quite a few times, and so we have certainly heard the general comments from the public in the past. Are there any discussion at this point from the school board? Okay, all those in favor of recommending this? All those opposed? So the school board, it's 0-6, we do not recommend.
And for the Budget Committee, I'll take a motion to recommend the petition article addressing a 5% tax cap
So
from
moved.
Raul, seconded by Matt. Any discussion?
That would change the number from 10% now to 5%.
No.
We don't have
We
a
don't
tax
have a
cap.
tax cap now.
Okay. Go ahead. Thank you.
Again, I have the same concerns of the public hearing, so I'm planning to abstain from it, but I am opposed to this, just for the record.
As Holly mentioned, we've heard this enough and seen it enough times, I don't
Yep.
need more information. Okay, from the Budget Committee, all those in favor of recommending a 5% tax cap? Opposed? Abstentions? So 071.
So we're up to petition warrant Article 11, which is a warrant article that would prevents taxpayers from funding lobbying and would zero out a budget line item. Can I have a motion from the school board to put it on and we can talk about it?
So moved.
Moved by Beth,
Second.
second by Kate. My understanding is that this would be advisory only if it were to pass. Is that true?
The dollar amount that is passed by the voters then becomes the school district's money. So there is the legal question around that Jim was investigating. And the other piece, just from a concern of mine, is that the article represents, that this kind of represents all people. And our SAU is very diverse, and I'm just concerned, that it says parents and citizens, that we're lobbying against their interest.
Oh, okay.
Can we get clarification on what what that specific line is used to fund?
I believe the biggest thing in that line is the principal dues, Kelly?
It's not the principal dues, it's the dues to the New Hampshire School.
Okay.
NHSBA.
So-
Is there anything else?
Is that the
in there?
only thing in that line?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
And my concern with that is, School Boards Association provide us all the policy pieces, the overall policy pieces. We can always call the School Board Association and get free legal advice, and we do that quite frequently, and that's very beneficial. If you were to be looking to fill a significant position in the SAU, that's another organization that does that. So not belonging to them, by zeroing this line out, does take away some pieces. Just an hour of legal services is somewhere between $285 and $325, depending on the legal firm and the person in that firm. So every time we get a free hour from the School Boards Association, that's appreciated.
And that's even to understand like a policy.
Yes, and they maintain our policy manual, so all of that information and help with policy development. But also, they provide the school board members with education related to laws and a significant amount of training. So, yeah, we would, if we were to try and take that training without being members, we'd have to pay fees.
The idea that the NHSBA is primarily a lobbying organization, I think is a gross misrepresentation of what they do. To the extent that they're a lobbying organization is that they annually they poll all school boards in New Hampshire, can send representatives, delegates to a convention to voice opinions. They do not independently generate positions. They act to coordinate the general activities of school boards in New Hampshire. It's a two-way communication. It's very transparent. It's open to the public. This is not something like a backward word. The advantages, even if you don't like the positions they take, the advantages that they provide in terms of cost savings, education, and advocacy for schools, school boards, and communities is a huge value. I don't think we could operate without an equivalent body available to us.
Thank you, Tom.
Can I ask a question? What is the actual amount of the line item?
$5,500.
That's it?
No, this is to essentially muzzle us from being able to participate in the statewide, the statewide communication between school boards and our legislative body, because it's very rare that the majority of school board members can go up to Concord, sit in on all the different meetings, write position papers. But we can make our concerns known to New Hampshire SBA, and they will communicate. They are our eyes and ears in Concord.
But I do think that what Andy says, that, you know, if he uses them regularly to get advice, opinions, et cetera, that's worth a heck of a lot more than $5,500.
It is, and
it's
we
well
use
worth
them,
it.
and we
Right.
will call them.
I've used that more than that myself.
Yes, we've definitely, we will call
I
them.
can attest to that.
So although it's out of order, I guess, Drew, did you have a comment? It's fine, you're as a
I have a comment, and it's way out of order because it's really back on the amending Articles of Agreement. As the person who actually wrote this legislation, in either case, the cooperative district may then, by majority vote, elect to apportion all such costs by adoption of one of the formulas. This is in RSA 195:8. Just laying it out there.
So by majority vote, we can amend an apportionment formula, but we could approve it. But if we don't have a supermajority, we can't put it into our articles of agreement that allow us to do it. Is that?
No,
No?
well, ask Jim.
Right.
But
Yeah,
I
that's
would
a great
interpret
question.
that as you
Yeah.
can amend, you
Okay.
can do the apportionment formula
Right.
independent of any other
The question,
amendment.
Drew, is that some of the proponents of the petition warrant article believe that since this would be passed more recently, it would therefore supersede any prior elements of the article agreement, and that.
But this is state law.
But that's state law. That's state law that he's reading.
No, and that's what Jim's pointed out, a number of conflicts, but at the same time, it gets very complicated. It doesn't mean we won't end up in court.
Absolutely. I just want to make sure that
Yep.
that's,
Thank you. We voted to not recommend it.
yep.
That's all we can do.
I can't ask you to do any more,
Right.
but. Thank
Okay,
you.
so at this-
I apologize for the interruption.
No, it's
No,
all right.
no, it's fine.
It's fine, it's good information. Another little thing to bring to Jim's attention. So at this point, we are voting on whether or not we want to recommend the 11, petition warrant article 11. All those in favor? All those opposed? So, 0-6. Just,
So I'll take a motion from the Budget Committee to recommend the petition warrant article, which would zero out the account line for school board fees.
So moved.
From Raul, seconded by Matt. Any discussion?
I
Seeing
just
none.
want to say
Oh,
something.
sure.
I can't help myself, I guess. I'm just offended by this one. It's a politically driven attempt to further defund public education. His arguments are based on half-truths and scare tactics, and it's unfortunate that somebody was driven to believe those things enough to make it a petition warrant article.
And with that, all those in favor of the article, in favor of recommending, opposed? 0-8.
These all
Well,
come from the same
Budget Committee will
direction.
not be recommending.
I mean, these articles are all coming from the same direction, I assume?
Yeah. Yes.
I think if you wanted to see copies, they're available at the SAU office. Of
So
the
they're
actual
not
petitions.
they're not anonymous, they're.
it's
No,
not
no,
anonymous,
no,
it's
you can
public
see-
record.
It's a public record, you can see
Signatures
exactly
are
the
Should
sign.
it be public? I mean,
Oh, it is.
it's getting old. It's getting old.
Moving on to
Really?
Article 12.
Article 12. Do you want to go first on this one?
No.
Okay, so this is petition warrant article 12. This is to rescind the unassigned
The
general.
retained fund
The retained
balance.
fund balance. So this would bring it down to 0. Of course, we will have a vote on this at Article 7 or 6, but then we will have another vote on this at Article 12.
Or
So-
not, like, or it could get tabled. Or
It could get tabled, it could do a
withdrawn,
lot
or
withdrawn. So anyway, I need a motion to put on the floor.
So moved.
This is moved by Beth, second
Second.
by Cindy. Too many CK names. Okay. So, do we have any more discussion on this? I feel like it's been beaten to death. So, all those in favor? All those opposed? 0-6, the school board does not recommend this.
Okay, motion
How
by
it
the
gets
Budget
written.
Committee to recommend the article rescinding the retained fund balance, moved by Raul, seconded by Matt. Any discussion?
Just a question, does this bring up that caveat like it does for the earlier one?
Which one?
That if beyond the 2.5%, 2.5% doesn't pass, the 1% is in question?
So
This
what,
is rescinding the whole thing.
I know, but does that open up the caveat? That, you know what I'm saying?
it doesn't as written, however,
I'm
a
just
person
wondering.
from, if that goes down to 0 because it doesn't pass, on the floor, someone could amend this, if it's up to the petition warrant article, to say, to amend it to go up to 1%. So that could
You sure
happen.
that that's?
I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, I
don't
just
know
think
if
that could
would be
happen.
considered,
Could,
a change of intent of the article.
maybe.
No, it's not change of intent, it's change.
Can you go to the microphone, Drew?
What's the subject? The subject.
Can they do it, I guess is the question.
This is 13?
12.
12. Okay.
Couldn't they
The
just change the word?
subject, in my opinion, is the unassigned fund balance,
Retained fund.
The retention.
retention thereof. If Article 7 fails as written, or fails at 1%, it fails. If Article 7 is amended to 0, that's a different case.
No, but the question is, if Article 7 fails,
Yes.
then we're told that it reverts to 0. Because it essentially resets and starts you say, if we're gonna vote on this, we're wiping out. So if that went to 0, could someone then amend Article 12 to effectively reinstate it?
Right. My opinion, and I will take Jim's advice in any case, is if Article 7 fails, you can take Article 12 and amend it to whatever you want. You can change it around as long as the subject is retention of the retained fund balance. However, if Article 7 is explicitly amended to 0, then you can't. That's my opinion. Why am I splitting that hair? It has to do with no means no, the rule that I talk about at every meeting. Once the voters have said, you can't do that,
Okay.
If that was true, then is Article 12 mute and not covered by the moderator?
is it not covered?
Well, I mean, if it's 0, then do you cover the article that's down there? Because I would contend if there's another article, unless there's been reconsideration to restrict it, that article is valid, and I can come up and make my motion. So 13 contradicts 7.
12.
12,
Yeah.
12 contradicts 7.
Right.
And the-
I agree with you if it goes to 0.
Yeah.
My question is, are you then saying that 12 is not discussed?
Under what prior conditions?
If 7 went to
7 goes to 0.
If 7 went to 0, then I would believe that 7 can be discussed and voted on, but it's null and void.
I have a question.
12, sorry, yes.
But the point here is, this one specifically says unassigned general funds, and I could argue that general funds is not necessarily
No, it's
the
saying.
same term as fund
no,
balance.
It's referencing the RSA and saying it's no longer retains any unassigned fund.
General
general
funds,
funds.
whatever general funds is.
But that's the unassigned fund balance.
That's the definition.
Well, we're making that correlation or that relationship, but is it really a good relationship to make?
Yeah,
I
they're,
think that's the definition of the unassigned fund balance, is that it's unassigned general funds.
yeah, they're talking about 148, 198, 4B.
So you've clarified it for us, Drew. So basically.
Did I?
You have, because basically if 7 fails.
Yes.
But nobody makes a motion to change it to 0. 7 fails.
Yeah.
Then 12 comes up. It's potentially, someone in the floor could then go back up to 1%.
That's,
To reinstate to
Could,
some level.
to reinstate to some level.
that's my opinion.
Okay. But
Jim
if
should
7
weigh in.
Gets amended to 0, then we are SOL.
And passes.
Right.
Yes.
But
and
of
passes,
course,
right.
this is one of those ones where the DRA has the final say.
Right.
And then we get enough signatures to make sure it requires 2/3 majority to pass.
Okay, so at this point, so I just, oh, sorry, it doesn't matter, I'm not still gonna recommend it.
7 gets amended to 0.
Yes.
and
That's what we're gonna have,
It
right?
still goes to 0, but then 12 could be used.
That's
Right,
my opinion.
got
Yes.
it. You got a lot of,
worst-
very complicated, okay. But in the meantime, does the school board recommend 12? So
We already voted.
did we
Oh,
vote?
oh,
We
we
did,
did.
we did vote, it's up to you guys.
The worst of all possible worlds is if both of those pass.
Yes, well, we're gonna cross that bridge when we come to it. But we're not gonna come to it. We're gonna cross that
That's
bridge
right.
and not come to it.
We're gonna cross the bridge and blow it up.
Okay, so I think it's up to you guys to vote on
Yeah,
this.
but I think we brought it to the floor.
And because
Andy,
this
we
one
brought it
came
to the
later,
floor.
this is the one that counts,
Any more discussion?
right?
Okay, does the budget committee recommend rescinding the retained fund balance? Opposed? Unanimous, 0-8. Great, I already wrote that down.
So now we're at the petition warrant Article 13, which is, this is we've seen this every year for many years. This is to have the tax impact put on the actual warrant, which as we know, never mind, okay. I need a motion. Beth,
Second.
second, Kate, okay. What I was going to say is, obviously, from all of this discussion about, what gets actually printed and what actually we say at a meeting, that can change. So even this could change. So anyway, any discussion on this one? All those in favor? All those opposed? 0-6.
Motion from the budget committee to recommend the petition article to the tax impacts on the ballot.
So move.
From Raoul, seconded by Matt. Any discussion?
I got a question. When you give your briefings that are presented to the district, there's always a tax impact. So therefore, why are we requiring this?
We're not,
I don't know.
none of us
I think
wanted.
one of the
my question
things
as well.
Is in anticipation of SB 2.
We don't have that, so.
So
Okay.
effectively, we're already doing what they're asking.
Right,
us-
It's
That's
not,
right.
it's not printed
moot point.
in like
They
the
want it
annual
in
report.
They
where
want it
the
now,
warrant
which
is.
could change by the time we have the meeting in March. They
But
want it in the report.
that's an
first.
administrative, easy-to-do thing if need be, right?
So why would I not vote for it, knowing that we already have the information available?
Right.
Because the time at which it has to be posted by this method is to some degree premature.
I agree.
And quite frequently, the actual impact is in a state of flux as we approach the meeting.
Exactly.
Right.
But this is an estimate, and it's a best effort estimate at that time.
Correct. It's just a question of, is this necessary and beneficial to the process? And
It's only to the curiosity of the people that are there, they want to know if it's .3 or is it,
But it could
you
create a
know,
lot of confusion too.
but if it's in-
$10
If it's in the
per-
book at one number and on the slide at a different number and then spoken to as a third number, is that beneficial?
No.
Well,
It's a-
that's a question of opinion,
Yeah,
apparently.
So,
and I would say it's an estimate. One thing is not going to say 33 cents and something going to say $10. It's going to be within a range that should be looked at as a best effort attempt to come up with an estimate.
Darlene, can you comment at all on how much the estimates might vary in the timeframe between when they would be submitted for publication?
I mean, I can't say how much they would vary, but we have updated revenue estimates as the meetings have approached. Just because we move forward through the cycle, we get 1 or 2 months more data, and the business office is better able to determine, what type of revenue might be available, and that would have an impact on the tax rates. And
You characterize them as insignificant changes?
I couldn't characterize, I think in some cases they've been significant enough that significant enough that as the person calculating it, I'd want to present the difference and the change.
See, the big changes that I've seen are when certain articles have actually been pulled at the meeting, which dramatically changes the landscape. And Tony, I understand, and I think to a large degree, the intent of this is met by this current group. I could see that if we had a different operating group that was not nearly as thorough and/or transparent, that this could well be called for. But where the people, your group, has traditionally opposed this because of the fact that they felt they were fulfilling the obligation to the community and that there was benefit to having the most accurate information put in front. They have suggested to us and to the community not to support this. I'm willing to defer to your group in that opinion, your collective group.
One of the main reasons that I present opposing this is from a context perspective. Because if you look at your tax bill, you can't see a co-op tax rate. You can't get there. You see a local education tax rate, and that local education tax rate for Brookline is for K to 6 and their portion of the co-op, and for Hollis it's K to 6 and Hollis's portion of the co-op. You can't get to the co-op piece. So to have it there, you don't know the context of what that is even as a percent of what you're paying now. Do you know what I mean?
I
And
understand that
because
it's a matter of satisfying some people's curiosity of knowing
which
whether
they
some-
can be, we post the public hearing documentation, which includes the tax impact. To the best of our ability, we post in advance of the annual meeting, barring last minute changes, what the impacts are. So it doesn't, again, for me, it's a contextual reference, and there's no other information that can go with the number. What's been asked in the past is, well, can it go on with something that says, it's 3 cents per thousand and that's X% higher than last year? And Jim O'Shaughnessy has flat out said that you can't do that.
Yeah.
So without that kind of contextual reference, it's
doesn't-
effectively meaningless. You would have to add it to the Brookline School District side, then try to figure out what your town tax, impacts are. And I know that what the chair of the Hollis Budget Committee and I both do at each of the annual meetings is to put everything in context. And we present where the co-op or where the Hollis School District sits within the entire tax bill. And in the co-op's case, it's the tax bill for Hollis and the tax bill for Brookline, and we present that information so that people can see how it all aligns. And that's the place that we do it and have the discussion about
It's
it.
going to look silly in certain cases where you see something is 50 cents and it goes up to $1. That's a 100% increase.
Sure.
So you could have a plus or minus, you know,
In
degree of
the
accuracy,
context of how it's
100%.
presented, yeah.
Right, and something else might be $10 and it goes up to $11 and that's 10%. So it's all over the place when you're looking at that kind of granularity. I think what people are looking for, to know that something is $1 or something is $10 as an effect of the tax rate. So I agree with you 100%. It is, if I was looking at it, I would discount everything that's there except for the approximation. What range are we looking at? Under $1, over $1, under 10, over 10, whatever. But I would also hope that everything's in Excel so you can change it real quickly and it will spit it out. What do you think? No?
Try the best you can, but don't change
So my
things on the
perspective
fly.
on this one is different in that we have these warrant articles, they have dollar amounts on them, but most people out there cannot put those dollar amounts into a context. Is $10,000 a lot of money? Is $100,000 a lot of money? Is $10 million a lot of money? What's a lot of money? You really can't put that in the context. It's difficult to put it in context here, looking at it warrant article by warrant article. If you have a tax impact on something, it kind of gives you a sense of this is something that's really minor or something that's, you know, somewhat significant. And for a lot of people a lot of parents who have kids that are trying to decide, do I want to try to get a babysitter so I can go to the co-op school district to attend this? Is this something that's really important to me or not? Or do we make some sort of arrangements? Or do we just say, all right, we'll let the other people do it? This gives them a context to say what's a big thing and what's not a big thing. So there is a value for it.
I would just also add that most people pick up the annual report when they walk into the meeting. And they're going to see, right? So their best resource is to review the public hearing documents that are going to be put on the website, to review the annual meeting decks that are going to be posted in advance of the meeting, because no one's going to get through a 100-page annual report.
But if there's something up there that has a significant tax impact, it's going to be discussed on Facebook. It's going to be discussed
Yeah.
on email. So,
Okay, so is there any other?
Should we put more seats out for the public, or?
This time I'll take the vote. All those in favor of putting the tax impacts on the warrant? All the, 1, 2. Opposed? 6. 2, 6, 0. The Budget Committee is not recommending.
So, and then Article 14 would be to transact any other business, which may legally, we don't need to take a motion on that. Just quickly, process observer.
Not really much to say. We definitely need a little more time on deliberations, but we did a good job, I think, especially with some last minute changes of legal advice.
Thanks. I would take a motion to adjourn the school board meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Beth.
Second.
Second by Kate. All in favor? 6-0.
Tom, I'll ask for your input as process observer, please.
Just, it was a very well-organized and well-run meeting, and there was plenty of interesting dialogue.
Okay, I'll take a motion to adjourn at 8:39 PM.
So moved.
From Raul, seconded by Matt, just to keep it consistent. All those in favor? 8-0, thank you.
thank you very much.